So
Okay.
what I think, right, is really, really great about some of the podcasts that we enjoy is that people come with like their own thing to talk about, something they're really passionate about. And when it's like a duo or a couple of people, I mean, a couple of people it gets a bit noisy, but certainly with a duo, like someone can jump in and essentially pitch their thing that they're passionate about, and then the other person gets to be like a curious onlooker, that
Yeah.
kind of with a shared passion. Okay, so my name, Samuel Jackson. I feel like first day at school here, but
Yeah.
online I'm going by this Sam Jax. So that's SAMJXX, and that's simply because there's some famous movie star called Samuel Jackson, and he always seems to outrank me on Google. So I have to spell my name stupid to rank. So it's JAXX. That's my online pseudonym. It's horrible calling yourself an entrepreneur because everyone's like, you sound like a bit of a dick. But that's probably the most accurate description. If I'm giving my CV to someone, I would say, hey, I'm head of product. I usually do CTO type roles, and that's what I do most of the time now. But I'm not a softie. I'm not a software engineer. I'm a systems engineer. And what I have been doing for the last 2-3 years is optimizing business operations, which is kind of what we're here to talk about.
So
Name.
I'm Vicky.
Name.
Yeah, Vicky Jakes, military training there. Yeah, Vicky Jakes. And I happily call myself an entrepreneur without thinking that it sounds like you're a dick. I don't necessarily lead with it, but I'm comfortable with calling myself an entrepreneur. I left the corporate world about 4.5 years ago, and since then have set up 2 successful businesses. One's like a training membership for people, mostly women, who want to reskill and learn how to build websites. Maybe like they've got their own business, and don't want to bootstrap the kind of the marketing and things like that. And that was a happy accident, that little business, that turned 6-figure within about 18 months, and it's one of my happy places on the internet to hang out with those fellow geeks. And then last year, back in 2021, I launched, I think the phrase is boutique agency, and
Should we call that what it is?
Yeah.
So we say it's
Yeah,
a person that's responsible for all of it and subcontractors? Is that how we'll
pretty
define
much.
boutique?
Yeah, I think boutique is, the way in the estate agent world of saying something's small. It's small. But so I set up an agency last year. I was already doing doing marketing services, specifically lead generation and ads using social platforms, because that's what I could just see working. My background is, marketing tech, website building. I've been doing that for like 20 years, and it was inevitable that I would end up doing something like this, having worked in agencies. So I know like how they work, what makes them good, what makes them bad, how to generate leads for them, and how to deliver the work as well. So I'm very much like you, a generalist, Sam, even though my lilt is slightly on the marketing side and the tech side. And I remember a recruiter once said to me, "You're not going to get any jobs being a generalist, Vicky." And I was like, "We're going to stop this conversation here because I disagree with you." Like she was like, "Well, people only want specialists," but I've had a really successful career in the agency world, being a generalist. I know a bit about everything, and it was just, like I said, inevitable that I'd end up launching my own agency. It's gone from me and one other doing the day-to-day to five of us a year later. So I'm on a business. Yeah, I'm on a business growth journey with that, and it's definitely a much bigger business than the training business. And the entrepreneur side of what I do is because I looked at the marketplace and could see people don't want to do online training anymore. On the other side of the pandemic and things like that, actually they just want to pay for services again. So
if someone asks you, give me the breakdown, give me the feature list, give me the spec of you as a person, that's what's on your CV, or you as a marketer, it's like, well, I've got all these skills, and you would go, well, yeah, that's a general set of skills, but the magic seems to be that bridge, building the bridge, like that copy formula. Like, okay, you're here now with a specific problem, and here's the future solution. And like, no one gives a about the skills that are required to build the bridge. It's like, well, I'm over here now. I have something I want to sell, and over here I'm selling it. Like, that's the value prop, I guess, of your agency business. But those skills in the middle, like, we fanny around giving them different like terms. I'm a copywriter, I'm a marketer, I'm a PPC person. Like, yeah, they're all the skills, but ultimately, I guess you got to be able to understand all of them. What makes a good marketing agency? You said like you've been in them, you now have one. Like, what makes a good one? And do you agree that's like the value prop?
I think what makes a great marketing agency, dev agency, any company that's providing a service within a time frame for a client, right? That is there to help a client make more money, make more leads. It's just great problem solving. Right? It's just like having a natural propensity to look at a problem and be able to assess it and find the best solution, like to solve that problem. Now, it could be this bit of tech, this bit of tech. It could be this specialism, which is why I think I have accrued a little bit of knowledge about so many things over the years. Because if I'm helping a particular client and actually it turns out we need to use Pinterest to reach them, off I go to find out more about Pinterest. And what the thing I found that I was quite good at agency, which is what kind of got me out of wanting to be a developer years ago, and I kind of got more into client and project management, was because I was quite good at sitting in the middle of everybody and being able to translate their different language to each other, and then put that into like a project. That's just you have to absorb a little bit of all of those specialisms and those worlds, and when you do that after a while, you realize actually most software, especially now, in this sort of day and age, is pretty similar in terms of user experience, because we know there's like one type of user experience that's going to encourage engagement versus another. Most websites are built the same. Most ad platforms are pretty similar as well. So once you know one, you can kind of understand others. So then it becomes about, is this the right channel for you and why?
Yeah.
And it encapsulates itself as problem solving.
Yeah, I friggin' love that. And I guess this is like, people always say, well, what do consultants do and what do these boutique agencies do and whatever. And I had a mentor who always used to love a car analogy, and I think they're great because they're easy to understand. Like, you might be able to get an Uber really cheap. You might be able to get someone to drive you from one location to the other really cheap. Like, that's the cost of doing the thing. But the value of a consultancy, in my head, or a boutique agency, or someone that sits in that middle space is, well, I can read the map. Like, you're telling me you want to get from point A to point B. Well, I can navigate that for you. I can tell you, like, you could do that on a bicycle. Or actually, no, you're going to need a jet. And if you want to know how to build a jet, I'll show you that. It's just that there's value in making that decision for someone. Like, you, as an individual coming at a new problem, I mean, like, I don't know. If you know nothing about weight loss, dieting, exercising, and you decide you want to run an Ironman, like getting a trainer that goes, yeah, you probably don't want to lift weights, you want to do a lot of running, cycling, swimming, like just having someone point you in that direction, and hey, you probably want to eat these specific foods, just that signposting, just that information, like there is value in that, because I guess it saves you the time, and in my head, like I always think very functionally, it's a time, cost, money saving thing. Like that's always what it comes down to in my head.
I like that. You're like, yeah, it's it's very logical, but it's a thing, Vicky. It's a thing, yeah. Why would I do this podcast? Well, I personally wanted to do this podcast because sitting and talking about business and tech, even just like we've done here, we've already mentioned a couple of businesses, right, in this conversation. It makes me really happy because I love new things. I love investigating new tech, new ways of working, what's going on out there. I can't consume podcasts and articles and books enough. And quite often I don't have enough people to talk to about this stuff. Even in some of the groups I'm in, the business masterminds I've been in the past and things like that, they would probably have a really worried look on their face if I'd put on the fire hose of what I would like to talk about. And so I just wanted to find an outlet to just put my take on kind of where I think the world is right now in terms of like marketing and running businesses, but specifically in my corner of the internet. And, you know, the fact that I get to talk to you about it is even better because, and I'm not just like talking to myself, I can, you know, learn and kind of get other ideas from someone who's working in not a million miles away, but a slightly different space. How about you? What do you want to do?
Say, like, I totally relate to what you're saying. Like, new ideas, new products, new businesses, new takes. It's like crack cocaine. Like, it's like sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's ecstasy, and it doesn't necessarily like make sense to investigate it. Like, if you were to explain the ROI of just being curious, it's quite a difficult thing. It's just like, well, I just like it. I just enjoy it. It's like, for me, I think it's like eating cake. It's like going for a walk. It's just invigorating. It just brings you so much energy. And I have been saying for a while now, like I'm involved in businesses that, well, I am involved in businesses that are like FTSE 100. My businesses are all six figures. A couple are over $1 million. I don't own those wholly. Like, but that's the world I want to get into. Like, I want to have those higher level conversations. And we spoke about this when we were saying, like, well, what's our niche? Like, what's our vibe? Well, we're not going to start telling people how to run 10 and 100 and million pound companies because we've never done that. We're not CTOs of those types of companies, CEOs. We've been involved in them and we have a take and opinion and we've operated in them, but we've never founded those. So it'd be wrong for us to talk about it. But we have founded multiple six-figure companies and we're looking to take them to that 7-8 figure range. And I'm also in these different masterminding groups and you chat and quite often the chats are about similar things like, oh, I'm just wondering how to even run an ad or how to position my product or like, what is this market, a funnel, a CRM? Like, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. And fair enough. Like everyone's been there. Everyone's got to start there. I want to like, well, what's the next level thing? Like I've now got all these academic bits of knowledge. I want to figure out how to smash that out to a multiple £1 million business. And for me as well, like in 5 years, I want what Dennis Felix Dennis, even the guy who had Maxim magazine, I think his books, How to Get Rich, How to Be Rich, shit title. The there's a billionaire, he's dead now. He talks about 1 unit. Well, I think he gives these different levels of rich. There's someone talks about £10 million as being like 1 unit of wealth, and at that point, you can pretty much do what you want, more or less. You don't have to work. That's my goal, £10 million. Because you were talking about being interested in investing. I really recommend checking out a Tim Ferriss podcast episode with Mr. Money Mustache, who he talks a lot about this FIRE. You follow him? Yeah. So financially independent, retired early. There's also a group that the MFM guys, Sam Parr and Sean Puri, talk about Fat Fire, where it's like, okay, yeah, like it'd be cool to have 50 grand a year to live on, but what would it be like with 500 grand a year to live on, or £5 million a year to live on? Like, how do I make that happen? For me, that's what this podcast is for, is to say, okay, I'm doing this thing, like I want it to grow, I want it to explode, and I think it's probably worth us talking about what we were considering calling the podcast, if we're going to give it that name now, and what we think it's about.
I don't know. How do we feel about the Chief Optimisation Officers? When you're saying it out loud.
The more I thought about it, the more appropriate I felt it was. Because, well, I don't know, like from asking you questions, every time you're talking, I'm like, what's the process behind that? What's the moving parts? Tell me that mechanically, how did that work?
Yeah.
And that's my vision. I don't know how you feel. Like,
you know, so to your point about why you want to start a podcast, I think being able to like have those conversations about the growth of your businesses in public is really important, because you'll rock up every week with things to talk about that hopefully will aid that that growth, and learn things that will on purpose, so that you can talk about them, that will help you aid that growth. And I think that's really important. And I'm hoping I might help you in some capacity with that from my side, because I certainly help businesses optimize from a lead generation and kind of sales growth point of view, and have done for many years. And but I really love the process side as well. I think every business could do with optimizing. I mean, like, I love optimization so much. I paid for myself to become a Scrum Master so that I could do project delivery better, right? So I became a Scrum for a year, just because I think a Scrum Master is like the kind of the apex of like what great businesses need to like deliver projects. A Scrum Master's job is essentially to direct their team members and optimize every facet of a project, so that you can agree on the things you're going to work on, you analyze those things that you worked on at the end of it, and then you make improvements. And that whole theory of creating a project that way, agile, right, has filtered into every facet of my professional life, the selling that I do, the marketing that I do, and also my personal life as well. I'm always taking things, analysing them, iterating on them, and trying to make them better. And I feel like I am naturally an optimization officer anyway. And, to be able to talk to someone who works in systems, although we can't talk about it because they'll kill you. From the military.
No, I'll just disappear. It'll be a tragic accident on my way home one night.
That would be it. Yeah. I think is great, because, and I think people listening to this and watching this will be able to, I hope, take away snapshots and insights and nuggets here and there about what they can go and look at in their own businesses to improve it. Because we're so nerdy and interested in the world around us, we can pass that information on to others, but do it in a British way. Do it in the way that we talk, the way that we view the world, because I love everyone around the world and in America, but I don't hear voices in the UK doing that enough. And so I not to make this about like what I want here, but hopefully talking on behalf of you as well, but is that yes, we might just be adding more content to the giant content bin out there, right? But I'm hoping it will appeal to people who live in the UK specifically.
I'm totally with you. Like, it's as if you have seen my notes, which I know you haven't, like, because I put this in way up front. Yeah. Okay. So getting you said a few things that I want to pull on. There isn't a world where you and I naturally fit to have these types of conversations. Like, our partners, God love them, like, they put up with us, but they want us to be a family person. So just go in and, like you say, blasting the fire hose at your partner about all this exciting stuff and business growth and blah, 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 blah. Like, they're probably not the best for a healthy relationship. Same with friends, same with business friends. But there are those American outlets, because that's a home of Silicon Valley, and also Americans are more naturally outgoing and willing to talk about these things and boisterous, and it's great to listen to, but it ain't British. Like, and I made like a bit of I guess you would call it a mood board, like screenshots of when I was brainstorming about this podcast. I was like, well, Churchill, so some of the great military leaders we've had. Richard Branson, you mentioned with all of his various quotes. I'm like, there is a British slant here on business. That guy I mentioned, Felix Dennis, he was British, did go over to America for a lot.
He was Dennis Publishing, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So I definitely think there's a British thing there. And you were talking about Scrum and optimizing it, and I guess the value of this conversation is where my head's at, is that one of the notes I made around efficient business, it was one of the topics I wanted to talk about today, was just because you have a big business, a profitable business, it doesn't mean that it's efficient. And just because you have a really efficient business doesn't mean it's profitable. And in those big businesses, people spend literally millions and billions of pounds. I mean, McDonald's spend millions of pounds on process optimization, because if they can make a Big Mac half a second quicker, that results in millions of pounds to the bottom line. And big engineering companies, in fact, I will tell you a story about an engineering company in a second, it definitely care about process. But the key insight for me when I've been doing this sort of business optimization stuff for smaller businesses is people don't have processes documented for the most part. People don't even take the time to break down the tasks that need happening. Typically, in smaller businesses, where you'll have a founder owner maybe. I mean, it's kind of like the E-Myth. I don't know if you've come across the E-Myth. I think you have the entrepreneur who's kind of got all the exciting ideas. You've got the manager who's responsible for counting the paper clips and managing timescales. And then you've got I think, what do they call them? The doer, the implementer, the person who actually, bangs nails into wood. And you typically get one of those three dynamics going on in a business. And you end up with, we do a thing and we get a result, but the bit that happens in the middle, well, that just kind of happens. And nobody usually takes time to analyse that because, well, we just do it that way and it happens and we get the results, so we're not really bothered about looking at it. But that, for me, is where the magic is, just documenting the process. And if we could tease out of new ideas and existing ideas, those processes, those activities that are happening, I think we could pull out the value, the lessons learned, just through just saying what we see. That's where my head's at least. Way back when, not that long ago really, when I was young, dumb and full of excitement, I remember I was a technician really. I was hustling, I was doing the doing. That's where I was in my early 20s. And I kind of had this cool backstory, like I'd got a scholarship to do medicine and I'd dropped out of uni to go and earn some money to pay some bills. I was flipping cars on the side. I was selling stuff on eBay and I went into a company, into an aerospace company, and that's where I was. And I was dead fortunate that I kind of had this eclectic mix of experience. None of it planned. It just happened. I was just trying to survive. Like, let's just be really clear that this isn't some crafted backstory. I was just trying to make sure I had fuel in the car, enough money to go out and meet girls, was doing exciting stuff at the weekend and could give my parents a little bit of money for rent and whatnot. Like that was my end game. And I ended up in this world where I was walking around with these MPs, that's members of parliament, kind of like, if there's anyone American listening, senators, around this facility, this military installation where I was getting some experience and money and whatever else with, I think the guy was actually the COO at the time. They all changed titles and moved around. And with this like cool backstory, like, oh, hey, I kind of studied medicine, but now I'm doing this other thing that was government funded. And, oh yeah, I've got an interview for Alan Sugar's The Apprentice, because like it was literally just an application form online and just had some cool things. I ended up on the Mall, like next to Buckingham Palace in head office with their CFO. And at the time, Google Glass had just come on the market. And I was like, why the f*** aren't we like doing something with this? Like, we do all this cool stuff for pilots in the visors and whatever else. Like, why don't we go make them? And the guy kind of knowingly laughed at me nicely. Like, he was dead friendly and dead helpful. And he was like, yeah, okay, Sam. Well, he entertained me. He's like, so how much do you think we could sell those, Google Glass helmet things? I think I was suggesting like we put them in cyclists' helmets, which is actually a thing now, by the way. And he was like, how much do we sell one of those for? And I was like, I don't know, £1,000. And he was like, okay. And how many of those do you think we'll sell? I was like, well, maybe 500,000. I don't, like, no idea. Just pulling numbers out my ass. And he's like, okay, great. And how much money do you think we make on those? I was thinking, well, maybe we'll make £500 on each unit. I don't know. Like, the numbers don't matter. Anyway, he kind of smiled and nodded and went, yeah, okay, cool. Well, you work on fighter jets that we build, right? I was like, yeah. He says, well, we sell each one of those for about 100 million. I was like, oh, right, yeah. He's like, it's not about the latest tech. It's just go do the big fuck off thing that makes a load of money. And I remember at that point having like this internal conflict between like, oh yeah, like just doing the hard thing is really valuable, but it isn't necessarily efficient. And for me, I feel like there's kind of this world, this little middle ground where we sit, where there's the 4-hour work week on our left-hand side, where it's like full autonomy. It's optimized for lifestyle. And that's what he says in there. Tim Ferriss talks about lifestyle design. And that book's awesome. Like, it's the OG book. So and then there's this other world where it's like, we make billions of pounds doing this really difficult thing, and it's not optimized for lifestyle design. And where I think we live is somewhere in the middle ground. Okay, I want to do something worth doing. I want to do really interesting stuff. But also, I want to go drop my kids off and pick them up from school, and I don't want to worry about money. And I feel like, for me, we unpick those things that those billion-pound companies are doing. And the tech is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and more accessible. I mean, doing that really difficult thing is becoming easier and easier and easier. Like, those tools that those guys have, they can't move quick enough. Whereas in a small company, you can leverage all the latest tech and optimize for lifestyle design. And I feel like that's kind of where we live.
I think, just tied into that, interestingly, I come from a corporate pharmaceutical marketing background. I did it for like 6.5 years. And if you want to talk about businesses that don't move very quickly, like they are that, right? Like, we had one website when I first started back in sort of 2010 in approval with their legal team for a year, which meant that the whole website, the concept, the campaign and everything just went out of date. And, we had to bin a £50,000 project, right, that everyone had worked on. And that slowness, right, it did us quite well as a business, right, because we were able to suggest cutting edge things like social media and then find ways that pharma business could work, you know what I mean, right? Or working in open source tech, like using Drupal rather than always using like .NET or whatever, and be seen as mavericks, cutting edge, and we were just doing what the industry was doing, right? And I always joked that pharma was about 3 years, maybe 4 years behind everything else. But that, for me, that frustration at how slow they moved, definitely has translated into a faster a kind of an interest in a faster approach since I left that world. And it makes me despair a little bit that people who don't have the restrictions, the legal restrictions, especially in the UK, like everything to do with patient marketing has to go through a body called the MHRA, right? And rightly so. It protects patients, it protects the industry, it protects the NHS, right? But if you're not in that heavily restricted world, you could like, and you've got so much amazing tech at your fingertips to go and try and test and help you with your growth. There shouldn't be anything stopping you. And for some reason, a lot of small businesses, a lot of new businesses, a lot of mid-sized businesses even still have that pharmaceutical mentality, that corporate mentality when they don't need to. People have never had it so good with growing their businesses, I think.
There is value in if you're on this curve, right at the beginning of this curve, where you're actually spending money and not making any, just going and learning and doing the thing. You may at some point go, do you know what, it's just more efficient to hire a WordPress person, or it's just more efficient to outsource it. You may get there, but back to what we said at the beginning, if you can build the skills to read the map, then you can decide whether or not you're going to drive the car from point A to point B or not. Like, developing those skills. Like, I can attest to that. I literally sunk hundreds of thousands of pounds into a startup. All the savings I built in my early 20s, instead of buying a house, I went, I'm going to start this thing. I know. And never went anywhere because we made the cardinal sin. If you read any startup book, it's like, go get your audience, go put it in front of people. And we didn't. We sort of did. We played business. We said, we've got a few of our ideal client, but then we went and built this like fancy tech for tracking vehicles and all kinds of shit, and built a team. So just go so put it in front of people. I definitely.
You haven't read The Lean Startup then by Eric Ries?
Oh no, I'd read it. I'd read The Lean Startup. I'd read How to Build a $1 Billion App. That's the worst part of it. is I'd read the books, but nothing beats, getting smacked in the face by your own ambition to go, oh, you don't, you might have read that, but you don't know call, mate. Like, go give it a go.
That book changed my career, actually, because my boss, the MD of the agency I was working at the time, read it and was converted so hard. He bought a hard copy for every single person who worked in the business, made us all read it. I was like, it's another book. Okay, I'll read it. Read it, got it instantly. And the premise for anyone listening is that you need to test the MVP of your business, your minimal viable product, right? Is this going to fly or not? And what's the one thing that you can do to test the viability of your business before you spend £100,000 like Sam has done?
Well, if I can signpost people as well. So I do have the book on my shelf somewhere. Here it is. So Eric Ries gets all the credit because he authored it, but there is a podcast by a guy called Mike Maples. Starting Greatness is the name of the podcast. And I'm trying to remember the name of his fund. He's a venture capitalist. Awesome guy. Like, I could not recommend his stuff highly enough. And he does an interview with Steve Blank. Steve Blank, as I understand it, now this is all me trying to remember it off the top of my head. Steve Blank had a student. Student was called Eric Ries, who wrote the Lean Startup. So it's Steve Blank who originally came up with these concepts. And there's an interview on there. It's like 30 minutes. So easier if you don't like reading, like go listen to this interview on Mike Maples' podcast. And Steve Blank says, if you're not sat across the table from your ideal customer, or the person who's going to buy your product, if their eyes don't dilate, if they don't light up, if they're not leaning across the table going, give it to me, like the product they're talking about, then you haven't got shit. Like, that's where you need to be before you start plowing money in. And it's all about this customer development, customer journey shtick. And there's absolutely no substitute for it. And I guess in the world of optimization, if you're in the space of starting a business, if you're in the place of trying to get a product market fit, if you're in the place of trying to validate your idea, that's the thing you need to do. And maybe that's the thing we should be doing with this podcast, because we're unless this is just our outlet and we're just going to have some nice chats and whatever. In fact, little call to action here. If you listen to this podcast, if you watch it on whatever hosting platform, please give us some feedback and we'll give you something back. We'll give you a surprise. Don't know what it is because I just thought of it now, but we will give you something back. Well, at least reply. Like, your feedback is invaluable. And if I may, I will share a little story right now. I started this little experiment to build a 50,000 Twitter following inside of 90 days. I started it 12 days ago, something like that. And from a standing start, more or less, from zero. I had 47 followers. I'm trying to build to 50,000. And I got this email off this guy, and I will read it to you, because initially I was like, who the f*** is this? Like, what do they know? And then I was like, nah, you're an idiot. You need to listen to feedback. The guy says, Sam, your emails are all about you. But people are thinking, what's in it for me? And he is right, because my emails have been, hey, this is how many new followers we got. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. Here's what I'm struggling with. Here's some observations. So he says, your emails are all about you. What value are you going to add for me through reading your stuff? Right now, you're at a low enough value proposition that I'm only keeping you around through some kind of weird courtesy. I'm wondering if you're going to get some unfollows. And then he goes on to give some advice about what I should write about. Now, initially I read this and I was like, f***ing hell, that's a bit brutal. But then
do one, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt. But then I was like, I kind of reflected. I was like, oh, he's right, actually. Like, he's bang on the money. And ultimately that's what you want. You want people to be going, I love your stuff. Like that. If that email had come in and said, I can't get enough, like, give me more, that would be product market fit. I ain't got product market fit yet. Like, that's what that email tells you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, interestingly enough, this week, I've been running like some test Facebook ads for the agency because I feel like you have to eat your own dog food, right? You know, you show people that you can generate leads and make sales and stuff like that. And I've gone to some really broad audiences. So when you do, you kind of have to batten down the hatches and expect, as a Facebook ads agency, to get some delightful comments. And I've had some interesting ones over the summer, let's just say. But
go on, what was your best one? What was the top one? What was the one that really you off? And give us their names so that we can go and troll them. No, don't. That's not very nice.
No, well, there was one guy who was like, you should probably take some of your own advice, actually. And I was like, but how do you know if these ads have worked? You can't judge it by likes or comments. But I was like, okay, at least I can see what they're seeing. But it was the guy who was like, where's your Facebook page reviews? I've gone to look at your Facebook page. You've got no Facebook page reviews. How can any business trust you? Did you know that 80% of you'll get 80% more business if you've got Facebook page reviews? I've never heard this stat in my life. And of course, we generate ad leads. We don't do like Facebook page reviews.
Well, did you know 90% of stats are made up?
Yeah, right. But I left it alone, and he came back the next morning and added more comments underneath. I think he was looking for a fight or something like that. So in that instance, hi, if you're listening, I've got a stalker, right? But he was like, this is just typical of businesses like this. They want to sell you magic beans. Here's some magic, and then he wrote a little soliloquy. It was like, hey, here's some magic beans. Oh, okay, I'll hand over some money. Thanks for the magic beans. And anyway, I mean, that's quite vanilla compared to some of the ones that I've worked with on clients this past month. One client in particular had an evangelical Christian lady claim she was the devil and that she's saved people in the car. Yeah, it can get crazy out there in the comments, right? But the point is that even though I was like, God, screw you and your rubbish comment. Oh, I'm going to delete and block you. But something in me was like, maybe I do need to put some more reviews up.
Yeah.
Maybe that should build trust. Maybe that is what people care about. I thought they cared about my leads and my results, but actually they want more social proof. You can't, even if it's just one person saying it, it's important because it's part of the overall feedback. I know we go with the majority when we look at analysing feedback, when we look at optimization, but those, what we used to call edge cases, right? Those, those opinions, especially when it's, free form text like this, are worth listening to. They're worth listening to. Not always worth acting on, but worth listening to. So that's
definitely
interesting.
Definitely. I don't subscribe. Yeah, I don't subscribe to this. It's probably a coping mechanism rather than a strategy where people say, just ignore it. Like, it's your choice to pick it up if it's, a difficult... Well, yeah, okay, but maybe. But certainly, let's just say at the stage we're at in business, where we're not doing the multi-million pounds, where you probably can just go, Q, I know better, I know what I'm doing. Like, at the stage we're at, that feedback, whether good or bad, is valuable. You need to absorb all of it. You don't need to act on all of it, and this is like learning WordPress, like building your website. This is the skill set that you need. You need to go through this process of hardening up, of figuring out which feedback's valuable, what you're going to act on, what you're going to not, and you need a process for dealing with it. Because otherwise, how the hell are you going to evolve? If you just evolve, I do think you need conviction, vision, and ultimately money in, money out. That's what we're optimizing for. Like, if that's happening, then doesn't matter. Just keep doing it. But otherwise, I think you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
Or ignore it at your own peril, at least.
I feel like we have a thread of what to talk about continuing as well. It's like looking at the optimization woes of businesses, what's doing well, what isn't doing well, and then pull out actions from that, right?
100%. I would love it if we had a bit of a theory and I think as well sharing our insights of what's going on in business. So we kind of had models and frameworks, don't we? I think it's important to share those, share what's working, share what's not.
I mean, I can talk about disasters all day long. I used to do a talk as well when I first got out of the corporate world, it was called The Final 10% of Projects, and it was all about bin fire projects. I don't do that talk anymore, but I've got some good stories.
Do we want to call the episode there? Because I think we could talk all day if we allowed ourselves to, and we shouldn't. I think we should get the reps in. Like,
agreed.
Let's schedule another one.
Agreed. Did you find that fun?
I loved it. And
Okay.
I'm even more excited for the next one, actually.